It happened in a sleek, glass-walled boardroom high above the city. The late afternoon sun streamed in, casting long shadows across the polished oak table. A dozen sharp-dressed executives sat around it, their faces a mix of curiosity and caution. At the head sat Martin Delacroix, CEO of a major real estate conglomerate, known for his charm, his ambition, and his ruthlessness. He smiled like a man who had already won. Across from him sat a young woman named Clara Jennings. She wasn't wearing a $1,000 suit, and she didn't have a fleet of assistants waiting outside the door. What she did have, though, was a folder in her hand and a determined look in her eyes. The air in the room was tight, silent. Everyone had been waiting for this moment, the signing of a multi-million-dollar land deal that would cement Martin's empire and put Clara out of the picture for good. Martin had just slid the final document toward her, along with an expensive gold pen. "All that's left," he said, with that same slick grin, "is your signature." Clara didn't move right away. She opened the folder slowly, her fingers steady. The room watched, some impatiently, some suspiciously, as her eyes scanned the document. Then, in a calm voice that sliced through the silence like a knife, she said the words that stopped time. "Excuse me, but this contract is a forgery." Her finger landed squarely on a paragraph near the bottom of the page. The smile vanished from Martin's face. "What did you just say?" he asked, his voice tightening. Clara looked up, her expression cool and clear. "This isn't the agreement we discussed. This clause, right here, gives you total ownership of the Ashbury property. That wasn't in the draft I approved. This version is fake." Whispers rippled around the table. A couple of Martin's associates leaned in to get a better look at the paper. One of them, a junior lawyer named Jared, visibly paled. Martin tried to recover. "I'm sure it's just a mistake. An older version got mixed in. Nothing intentional." Clara closed the folder and placed it in front of her. "I had a forensic analyst go over the digital trail of the documents. This file was modified 2 days ago. It was deliberately changed, and my initials were digitally forged. I also have a copy of the real agreement on a USB drive." She slid the drive across the table. For a moment, nobody spoke. Then, Martin leaned back in his chair, his hands folded, but his eyes flashing with something darker than frustration. "You're playing a dangerous game, Clara. Accusations like that can ruin reputations." Clara didn't flinch. "Only if they're false." The boardroom erupted into quiet chaos. Phones buzzed. The company's legal advisor left the room, face grim. Someone whispered about bringing in internal audit. Martin sat there, frozen, realizing he'd underestimated her. Clara hadn't always been someone who could face off with people like Martin. Just a few years earlier, she'd been a junior analyst at his company. She'd worked hard, stayed late, always followed the rules. That's how she'd earned a chance to co-invest in a redevelopment project that meant everything to her family. The Ashbury property had once belonged to her grandmother. It was more than land. It was legacy. At first, Martin had seemed like a mentor. He encouraged her to buy in, to believe in the project. But as the property gained value, things changed. Clara started getting sidelined. Emails stopped. Meetings moved without notice. And when she finally received the final contract for the deal, her gut told her something was off. She trusted that instinct and started digging. What she found was a careful web of deception. Edits to documents, conversations she'd never had, digital signatures that weren't hers. Clara realized she was being pushed out of her own deal, quietly and legally, if she didn't stop it. That's when she hired an independent document expert and a tech consultant. For 2 weeks, they combed through every file, every timestamp, every paper trail. And what they found confirmed what she feared: fraud. Martin had tried to erase her from the contract entirely. Now, in that boardroom, the truth was finally on the table. Martin stood up slowly. "This is nonsense. There's no proof I did anything wrong." "Maybe," Clara said, "but there's enough to start an investigation." Silence followed. Nobody defended Martin. Not this time. The next few days were a whirlwind. Clara's evidence sparked an internal probe, and then a criminal one. The media caught wind of it, and soon Martin's face was on every financial news outlet in the country. He resigned a week later. Clara, on the other hand, didn't just walk away with her rights restored. She gained something even more powerful: credibility. She was no longer seen as a quiet, careful analyst. She became the woman who stood up against corruption and won. Investors started calling her. Other developers wanted her on their teams.